Disclaimer: some of our content varies per video and may not be suitable for younger audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Also, in some content, we are critical of the video games, books, music, videos, and other creators on the platform. While we are a group-owned channel, our opinions expressed are solely on our own and may not always reflect the opinions of those associated with this channel. We at Novakast do not condone any and all harassment, IG, cyberbullying, doxing, swatting towards any of the people that we may be critical towards. How's it going, everybody? Rob here, back with another video. And okay, so periodically we have talked about the dog-free community, but I want to talk about something, because in responding to many of these videos, many of the commentary from these particular channels, I've come to realize that individuals from the dog-free community are split into two groups. You have certain individuals that, depending on the situation, depending on their past, their thoughts and feelings, etc., they don't like dogs, they're afraid of dogs, but to some extent they acknowledge that they exist, and overall even recognize that people that they know will have dogs and don't try to treat them like they're some kind of monster. However, there are the radicals, the individuals that will not take no for an answer, that will literally just treat you like you are some piece of filth, that you are nothing unless you get rid of your dog. There's no arguing, there's no discourse, there is nothing. It's their way or the highway. Now, periodically I have reacted or commentated to individuals like this, including individuals like PhaynIngmar. Recently I did a video of them responding to me, which, for lack of a better word, their video was lackluster, to say the least. And it is interesting, especially when it comes down to the comment that they decided to post on my video in terms of their response. Now, I want to point out again, just to kind of bullet point what was even mentioned in that particular video. So in that particular video, you have this individual, they show the screenshot of the image that I made about dog haters. They insinuate that I don't know anything between assertion and arguing, which, in a sense, in terms of our back and forth, is debatable on their part, whether or not they know the same. And overall, instead of actually showing any bullet points or any thing mentioned in my videos, they proceed to basically, for a lack of a better word, regurgitate one of their older videos. So in this video, I'll be responding to a comment that they left on the recent one, which is PhaynIngmar fires back. So this should be interesting, to say the least. So without further delay, let's go ahead and get right into this. Watched this whole thing, and I want my 27 minutes back. Honestly, I don't know if your video is even deserving of a video response. Well, considering the lack of response from the previous video of yours, I mean, I doubt you were going to respond anyways. Or if anything, actually acknowledge or rebuttal anything I say. In fact, if anything, it just seems like it's a one-sided argument when you yourself, you say you're going to make a response, but in turn, you don't even show any context to the videos. I mean, whether I'm right or wrong, you don't show any context. You only have yourself speaking in the video, which makes no sense whatsoever. You didn't even begin to address my video until 14 minutes in. It looks like we're still stuck on the whole bit where I rightly claim that you don't understand the difference between an argument and an assertion. And then you just simply deny it. Ironically, you asserted that I somehow don't understand the difference myself, but you did not argue it convincingly. You didn't argue it at all, but for heaven's sakes, I really don't want to stay stuck here. So firstly, the delay in me responding to his particular video. As I said before, especially with that particular video, there were other things I wanted to address. Things that have been mentioned in comments, as well as assertions, or at least assumptions of myself, that some people in your community have tried to fabricate and accuse me of, which, again, in terms of, the conversation itself, I figure need to be addressed. Especially since, again, it is connected into the same community of people. Now, I find it interesting that you don't even mention the fact, at this time, mention the fact that in that moment, I also addressed some of the problems or some of the concerns from some of the other creators or some of the people commenting. Which case, again, repeatedly, I had offered an olive branch on certain things that were said. But again, you failed to mention that at all, as if, that's not relevant. At the very least, at this point, I'm trying my best to play devil's advocate in terms of, what we talk about, our discourse, and in some sense come to an agreement on certain things. But like I said, you are an individual that has only one thing on your mind, and at this point, if I disagree with one thing, it just ultimately seems that I am wrong with everything else. That there is no discourse, there is no, peace between, our communities. Just rather individuals, bickering over the same thing, or different things for that matter. By the way, let's discuss where this whole argument between assertion and argument came into play. This began when Kanon tried to pull a gotcha with me claiming that I had assumed, or so tried to say that, nobody has ever claimed that dogs are the root of all evil. And that I had to, that I was making that up. Even though repeatedly I have made the point that certain individuals in the community, the radical people, so to speak, due to the content, how they speak, it is implied that dogs are the root of all evil. You may not have said it word for word, but by actions alone, by how you speak, a lot of times, especially with some of these people in the community, that is your mindset. And if I remember correctly, your exact words from your previous video, or at least the regurgitation from your previous video that you hooked onto the video responding to me, was the keywords, no dogs, no problem, correct? I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to refer back to actions speak louder than words. You claim that I didn't understand between assertion and argument. Well, here's me arguing, once again, that individuals from your community act a certain way, that talk a certain way, and at this point try to demonize people just because they have a different opinion than you. I want to point out too that in that situation you try to claim that I was, or at least at the very least accusing me of a fallacy for bringing up other issues, which I don't consider that a fallacy either. It was making a point, making a statement. But unfortunately, you are so tied up in this whole argument about dogs that you don't see that. And also accusing me apparently of trivializing certain things, which I have repeatedly stated that I recognize and acknowledge, a lot of the different arguments and issues that involve dogs. I will say I find it ironic that you say I really don't want to stay stuck here. I mean, let's be fair here. You're the one that kept coming to, my platform or platforms like mine to respond. Let's be honest here. I mean, just like I'm doing right now with you. If it was really that case where you didn't want to stay stuck in this, and honestly, I think the reason you continue to respond was because at this point, you refuse to be wrong. Or at this point, you refuse to accept the fact that there are other people that disagree with you or will argue your opinions. I didn't go line by line or use your audio, etc., because that would be so tedious. But I did address things you said. Different individuals will likely have a slightly different end goal, or perhaps the way of arriving there is what differs. But ultimately, we do want dogs TF out of human society and human settlements. I personally understand that it may not be realistic to expect this to happen anytime soon. However, the groundwork has to be laid down by someone, and the progress must start somewhere. Now, here's the problem with that first line of that text, is that a lot of commentators, a lot of times, they will utilize the video in question or content to rebuttal people's thoughts and feelings. By not even showing the video, it doesn't seem like you want any discourse, that you just want your thoughts to be out there. You don't show anything from the video itself or the videos in question for your audience to see. I mean, whether I'm right or wrong, you don't have any discourse. You don't have any rebuttal. You just speak your mind about the text, image, the post I made, giving your thoughts and opinions, accusing me of not knowing what assertion and argument is, and as I stated before, literally regurgitating a segment from one of your earlier videos. I'm sorry, but that's not discourse. That's not argument. That's not even anything. That really isn't. And by the way, it does seem like the end goal for you, since you want to talk about end goals, just seems to be you discussing your thoughts, your feelings, and your objectives. Not discussing other people's thoughts or their feelings, or even giving a rebuttal to what they have to say. Just living in a quote-unquote echo chamber, so to speak. Now, I will say, I appreciate you acknowledging the fact that, in reality, trying to remove all dogs from human society is, at this point, realistic. And honestly, I'm kind of curious to see how the groundwork would be laid to even implement such an issue, implement such a plan to have them removed, and how long that would take. Again, considering that how ingrained they are in human society. By way of analogy, there's a saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. In my view, dogs should have gone extinct sometime shortly after the Industrial Revolution. They've long outlived any purpose they may have previously served. Well, considering a lot of their uses, in the police, in areas where, in terms of healthcare, it varies, and that statement seems somewhat questionable. But, like I said, I understand your sentiment, though I think a lot of people will agree with me that it's unrealistic, to say the least. It may take several generations. I have no idea. I can't see the future, but dog culture is absolutely out of control, and must seem to be perfectly happy to ignore the very real dog crisis we have on our hands. It's funny again that you accuse me of assertion, because you're just assuming or asserting that, I am happy with the current crisis or any of the issues involving dogs. As I stated repeatedly, which, by the way, continuously you have failed to acknowledge, that I recognize certain issues with dog culture. I really do. But you can't... It doesn't seem like you can fathom an individual who is a dog owner, but recognizes that there are certain issues, certain problems, and wants to, at the very least, try to attempt to find a middle ground. But, again, it's either my way or the highway in some of these individuals, like K-Nun, where we can't have discord, it's only their way, and nothing else matters to them. Again, actions speak louder than words. Maybe I'll add more later, but we're obviously communicating at cross purposes here. I'd recommend a book from 1978 called The Dog Crisis by author Iris Norwell. Well, thank you for the book recommendation. I'm sure I'll probably get more out of that than I will with this discourse with you. Now, I want to go back to an earlier statement that I made, which was, at this point, with interactions with this community, I've broken it down into two parts. Part 1. Individuals that are uncomfortable with dogs, but acknowledge their existence. Recognize some of the issues, but aren't going to treat people like they're monsters for having a dog. And then you have the radicals. Individuals that don't believe in any discourse in terms of the topic, that anything that is said is completely wrong, and whether or not if you own a dog or not, if you disagree with them, you are lesser than thou. So K-Nun is an individual that I seem to see that falls under that category, the radical category of this community. So, anyway, I will say, adding on to this, is that this topic, and as I've periodically looked into it and done a little bit of research myself, yes, there are issues that need to be addressed with dogs. There are certain things that can be policed a little bit better, but due to some things in the community, it seems like it is passed on as something that is minor. Again, I understand that. So, overall, there are some issues that need to be fixed, and honestly, they can be fixed if we come together and discuss it with individuals that could possibly make those changes. But with us continuously bickering and at this point not finding really much of a discourse or agreement, so to speak, nothing's going to get accomplished. And I want to point out too, especially with individuals of the radical side of the community, you're not going to get much progress when you defame, shame, and ridicule the individuals that you are talking against. In fact, there is actually a proverb called, you get more with honey than vinegar, which generally means that it's easier to get what you want by being kind and gentle rather than being harsh or rude. So, anyway, to everybody, thank you guys so much for watching. Truly appreciate it. If you guys can, just like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you guys want to follow us on social media, links are in the description down below, as well as check out our daily content and the weekly podcast. With that being said, this is Rob Novakast signing off. Have a good one. Take care, and I'll see you guys next video.